I had a strange dream that night. It was described as a fictional story, but I still couldn't stop reading it until the very last page. My name is Melissa Lynch, and I am 35 years old. The year my father celebrated his 60th birthday, my 5-year-old son, who is on the autism spectrum, made a painting for him. My son spent 2 hours every single afternoon for 2 solid weeks working on that piece. Yet, at his birthday dinner, right in front of 20 guests, my father held it up and called it cheap. I swallowed my pride. I took my son by the hand, and we left quietly. For the next 7 years, my father acted as if the two of us didn't even exist. No holiday greetings, no checking in on his grandson, nothing. Until last year, when that very painting sold at an auction for a staggering $3 million. My father called me immediately. He didn't ask about my son, and he didn't apologize for that night. He simply demanded with absolute entitlement that since the painting had been a gift to him, he was legally entitled to the auction proceeds. But what he didn't know was that the person who bought the painting was someone who had been waiting for this exact moment, and they had their own plans for how this story would end. On November 12, 2016, at 7:45 p.m., I pulled my 2009 Honda Civic into the parking lot of the Ocean View Country Club. Jaime was in the back seat, tightly holding the painting we had wrapped in brown butcher paper and tied with a blue ribbon. He had been quiet the whole way there. It wasn't his usual quiet, but the specific kind of stillness he falls into when he's mentally preparing himself for something difficult. The valet looked at my car as if a vehicle from the wrong side of town had accidentally lost its way into a wealthy neighborhood. Behind us, a black BMW pulled up. It was my brother Bradley's car. His wife Vanessa stepped out, wearing high heels that probably cost more than my entire monthly grocery budget. Jaime kept the painting on his lap. It was a 16 by 20-inch blue and gold acrylic piece. It took him 14 afternoons to finish. Every day from 2:30 to 4 p.m., he worked for 2 hours in room 103 of the Children's Development Center, the same place where I work as an art therapist. The valet handed me parking ticket number 1893. I took Jaime's hand, and we walked through the double doors. I should have turned around right then, but I so badly wanted my father to see the incredible work his grandson was capable of creating. The dining room had 12 tables arranged in a horseshoe shape. Gerard sat at the head of the first table. He always sat there, in a spot where everyone could see him. The host led us to table 7, all the way at the back of the room. Seats 18 and 19, right next to the kitchen doors. Bradley and Vanessa were already seated at table 1, in seats 3 and 4, right next to my father. Gerard wore a navy blue suit that I knew cost $3,000, because at the previous Thanksgiving dinner, before I stopped attending family gatherings entirely, he made sure to mention the price. Uncle George was at table 4, seat 12. He waved when he saw us. George is my father's younger brother, a retired school teacher, and the only family member who had come to visit Jaime over the last 2 years. There were 20 guests in total. Gerard's lawyer friends, Bradley's business partners, and Vanessa's country club circle. In my father's eyes, the approval of these people mattered far more than his own grandson. As we approached, Gerard looked up. His gaze brushed over Jaime as if he were looking at an insignificant piece of furniture. Then he turned to Hugh Sanderson, a lawyer sitting 3 seats down, and laughed loudly at a joke I couldn't hear. Jaime tugged at my sleeve. He wanted to give the painting to his grandfather before dinner started. I told him, just wait a little bit. By 8:15 p.m., Jaime couldn't wait any longer. He slid off his chair and walked toward table 1. It was a distance of 22 feet from seat 19 to seat 1. Over the next 7 years, I would count that exact distance in my mind thousands of times. He held the painting with both hands. As he moved, the brown paper made a crisp, rustling sound. Everyone in the room turned to watch a 5-year-old boy on the spectrum carrying a gift to his grandfather. Jaime stopped right beside Gerard's chair. He tried hard to get the words out. It took him a full 8 seconds to force out 4 words. "For you, Grandpa. I made it." Gerard smiled, but that smile lasted for only 3 seconds. Under the watchful eyes of Hugh Sanderson and the other guests, he unwrapped the painting. The brown paper peeled away, revealing vibrant swirls of blue and gold stretching across the canvas. It was abstract, intricate, and beautiful. Gerard held it up so everyone could see. Then, his smile vanished. He spoke with a tone that carried a false pretense of caring. as if he were trying to help me understand a harsh reality for my own good. Kinda cheap, isn't it? The entire table fell completely silent. A heavy, suffocating silence that lasted 12 seconds. I would count those seconds later, too. I mean, it's sweet that he tried to paint, Melissa, Gerard continued, his voice easily carrying across the room. But this, well, it's a bit childish, don't you think? Vanessa smirked. I saw it clearly. Hugh Sanderson cleared his throat uncomfortably. Bradley stared down at his plate. Jaime's hand began to tremble against my arm. Gerard wasn't finished. You don't honestly expect me to hang this in my study next to my Rothko, do you? I mean, come on, let's be realistic. The Rothko was an original piece my father bought in 2008 for $85,000. He brought it up at every single dinner party as proof that he understood real art. All 20 people in that room heard every single word, including Jaime. I felt my son's fingers grip my arm with incredible force. He understood exactly what was being said. I stood up without saying a word. I took the painting right out of my father's hands. Taking Jaime by the hand, we walked straight toward the exit. Behind me, Uncle George's chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound was harsh and sudden. 18 people heard it. George called out my name. Melissa, wait. Gerard's voice cut him off impatiently, filled with disdain and leaving no room for argument. Let her go, George. She's just overreacting again. I didn't look back. I didn't say goodbye. I just kept walking. The valet brought my car around within 90 seconds. Parking ticket 1893. Jaime sat in the back seat, staring fixedly at the painting. He didn't cry. I thought he would, but instead he just looked at it, at the blue and gold swirls he had spent 2 weeks creating. He stared at the gift his grandfather had labeled cheap. That night was the last time I saw my father's face for 7 years, and he never called. We got home at 9:35 p.m. I hung the painting on the wall in Jaime's room, directly opposite his bed, so it would be the very first thing he saw when he woke up every morning. Jaime didn't say a single word for the rest of the evening. He silently went through his bedtime routine, brushed his teeth, put on his pajamas, and went to bed without a sound. I sat up waiting for my phone to ring. I thought that maybe, once the guests left, Gerard would call to explain, to apologize, or to say he had just reacted poorly out of embarrassment. But the call never came. At 11:30 p.m., a text message arrived from Uncle George. I am so sorry, Melissa. Your father was completely wrong. The painting is beautiful. Jaime is beautiful. If you need anything, I am always here. The next morning at 7:12 a.m., I sent a 2-word reply, thank you. That was November 12th, 2016. And I wouldn't hear another word from my father until November 18th, 2023. To understand how we ended up at that birthday dinner and why my father's words cut so deep, I need to back up a bit. Jaime was born on March 15th, 2011. His biological father left me when I was 6 months pregnant, claiming he wasn't ready to be a parent. I never saw him again. I raised Jaime completely on my own. During his first year, my father would occasionally offer a small hand, nothing that required any real effort, just handing over a $500 check out of nowhere or watching him for an hour. When Jaime was 18 months old, he stopped making eye contact and stopped responding to his name. The pediatrician referred us to a neurologist. In September 2012, the diagnosis came down in that specialist's office. Your son is on the autism spectrum. It's moderately severe. Early intervention is absolutely critical. I called my father from the parking lot. He answered on the 4th ring. How much is that going to cost? That was the very first thing he said. Not, how is Jaime? Or, are you okay? Just the price. The therapy cost $1,200 a month. As an art therapist, my annual salary after taxes, rent, and necessities was $52,000. I usually had about $200 left at the end of each month. My father offered to help with the therapy costs exactly once. Then he saw the first bill and asked if I had considered other options. He didn't specify what those options were, and I didn't ask. My brother Bradley had graduated from Stanford with an MBA in 2010. My father immediately handed him the CEO position at the family's real estate development firm, with an annual salary of $320,000. When I graduated from art school with a degree in art therapy, my father called it a complete waste of an education. He said I was coloring with children when I could have been out making real money. Between 2013 and 2015, I visited my father's house 3 times. Bradley went 47 times. Uncle George kept track and told me later. He said he wanted me to know that none of this was just in my head. At Thanksgiving in 2013, my father raised his glass at the dinner table to announce that Bradley had just closed a $2 million development deal. Then he turned to me. "Are you still just coloring with kids?" I never went back for Thanksgiving dinner after that. The last time I asked my father for help was in 2014. Jaime needed new sensory equipment for his therapy that cost $800. I had saved $600 and was just $200 short. My father refused. He told me Jaime wasn't his responsibility and that this was the path I chose when I decided to have him. His exact words were, "This is the choice you made." I ended up borrowing the money from Uncle George. George was 61 at the time and had taught middle school English for 35 years before retiring. He lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment with dated brown carpets and flickering hallway lights. He didn't have much, but starting in 2013, he gave me $200 in cash every single month. That money was the exact safety net that kept us afloat between Jaime's therapy bills and my paycheck. Every Saturday, George would take Jaime to the park to feed the ducks and walk around the pond. George never treated Jaime like a child with a condition. He just treated him like a regular kid who loved ducks. In October 2016, when Jaime decided to create a painting for my father's birthday, George told me to make sure I kept that painting safe no matter what happened. "A day will come when you'll need it," he said. I didn't understand what he meant back then. It took me 7 years to finally get it. On October 28, 2016, Jaime's therapist, Dr. Helen Nguyen, suggested we try a new approach called expressing emotion through art. Jaime was supposed to choose something he felt strongly about and express it on canvas. Jaime chose the subject entirely on his own, his grandfather's birthday. I was surprised. Over the previous 2 years, Jaime had barely seen my father, maybe 5 times total, and always briefly. My father would drop by for 20 uncomfortable minutes and then rush off. But Jaime remembered him. He remembered details I had completely forgotten, like my father's favorite colors, blue and gold. Dr. Nguyen asked if I wanted to halt the project, sensing my hesitation. I said no. If Jaime wanted to create something for his grandfather, I was going to support him. Jaime keeps asking for a large canvas, Dr. Nguyen explained. He wants to give it to someone important. He said, "Grandpa." I asked Jaime what he wanted to paint, and he typed his answer into his communication device. Grandpa's heart. I didn't understand what he meant by that. From October 28th to November 10th, Jaime painted every single afternoon. The schedule never changed, 2:30 to 4 p.m. in room 103. He selected a 16 by 20-inch canvas, neither too large nor too small, just right for a study wall or a hallway. He chose 8 colors but focused heavily on blue and gold. On the 7th day, I tried to help him by reaching for a brush. Jaime shook his head and typed on his device. Only my hands. I leaned back and just watched him. Jaime worked with absolute unwavering focus, averaging 83 minutes per session without a single distraction or break. He was completely immersed. I found myself counting his brush strokes, though I didn't really know why. Perhaps watching him gave me a sense of focus, too. Over those 14 days, there were exactly 127 strokes. The painting didn't resemble anything recognizable. It was a collection of abstract swirls, blue spirals winding into gold, and gold folding back into blue. There was no clear image or obvious meaning, yet there seemed to be a hidden order to it, a pattern I couldn't quite decipher. On November 10th at 4:03 p.m., Jaime finally set his brush down. He stared at the canvas for 30 seconds before typing, "Finished." Dr. Nguyen stood beside me as we both looked at the piece, a swirling mix of blue and gold where chaos and order seemed to meet. "Do you see it?" she whispered. "No," I admitted. "You will," she replied. She began explaining savant syndrome, pattern recognition, and how some children on the spectrum can perceive structures, mathematical relationships, and emotional frameworks that the rest of us completely miss. Jaime isn't painting what he sees, Dr. Nguyen said. He's painting what he feels, and what he feels is incredibly complex. I asked her if she thought my father would understand it. She paused for 8 long seconds. People only see what they are prepared to see. I wrapped the painting in brown paper and tied it with the blue ribbon. I had absolutely no idea that 7 years later this canvas would sell for $3 million. All I knew was that my son had built something beautiful, and I wanted his grandfather to see it. I already told you what happened at that party, but every single detail matters. We arrived at 7:45 p.m. Gerard was already there, standing near the bar with Hugh Sanderson and two other men in expensive suits. They were laughing, and Gerard had a hand on Hugh's shoulder. He saw me walk in. His eyes flicked to me, then to Jaime, and then right back to his conversation. No wave, no smile, nothing. Bradley and Vanessa arrived at 7:52 p.m., deliberately late because Vanessa loved making an entrance. She wore a red dress that likely cost more than my car loan. Bradley wore a suit that perfectly matched our father's. They had clearly planned it. Gerard welcomed them like royalty with loud greetings, firm handshakes, and proud introductions to everyone nearby. This is my son Bradley, CEO of Lynch Development, and his wife Vanessa. He never introduced us. The host guided us to table 7, seats 18 and 19 in the furthest corner, the kind of seats reserved for people you only invite out of pure obligation. Uncle George was already seated at table 4. He caught my eye and gave a small wave. That was the only recognition I received during those 20 minutes. I watched my father shake hands with 18 different people before dinner. He laughed, asked about their businesses, and complimented their wives. But he never looked at Jaime once. By 8:15 p.m., Jaime couldn't wait any longer. The guests were eating salads, and the room was filled with the hum of conversation. No one was paying attention to us in our corner. Jaime slid down from his chair, picking up the painting. The brown paper rustled loudly in a brief lull, causing 20 heads to turn. Jaime walked toward table 1. 22 feet. I remember every single step. His small hands gripped the canvas tightly, his pace deliberate and measured, the way he walked when he was trying incredibly hard not to make a mistake. He stopped right by my father's chair. Gerard was mid-sentence, talking to Hugh Sanderson about a property deal. He stopped talking. Everyone stopped talking. The entire room watched a 5-year-old boy try to give his grandfather a gift. Jaime struggled to speak. His lips moved, but no sound came out. He tried again. 8 seconds passed before he managed to say, very slowly and with great effort, "For you, Grandpa. I made it." A complicated look crossed Gerard's face. Perhaps surprise, perhaps confusion. He set his fork down and looked at the package. "Well, well," he said, his tone dripping with condescension, the kind of voice reserved for a toddler showing off a stick figure scribble. "Let's see what we have here, young man." He took the painting and unwrapped it right there. The paper fell away, revealing the blue and gold spirals. Gerard smiled. For 3 seconds it was a genuine smile, as if he were about to say something kind. Then it vanished. He held the painting up, turned it so Hugh Sanderson could see, and then brought it back to face himself. "Kind of cheap, isn't it?" He spoke with calculated gravity, as if he had seriously evaluated the work and arrived at a deeply disappointing conclusion. The table went completely dead silent for 12 seconds. A heavy, absolute silence while everyone processed what a grandfather had just said to his young grandson. Jaime stood there, his hand reaching out to touch my arm. I could feel his fingers shaking. Gerard's voice carried through the entire room, ensuring all 20 guests heard every word. "I mean, it's sweet that he tried to paint Melissa, but well, it's a bit childish, don't you think?" Vanessa smirked. A tiny, satisfied smile, as if she had been waiting for this exact cruel validation and was thoroughly enjoying being right. Hugh Sanderson cleared his throat awkwardly, but not enough to say anything. Bradley stared at his plate, his jaw tight and silent. Uncle George's face flushed bright red, but sitting 12 seats away, he was too far to intervene. Jaime understood. I knew he did because his grip tightened on my arm, his breathing shifted, and at just 5 years old, he had to stand there while his grandfather belittled his hard work in front of a crowd. My father still wasn't done. He never knew when to stop. "You don't honestly expect me to hang this in my study next to my Rothko, do you?" he said, looking at Hugh to make sure his lawyer friend caught the comparison. "I mean, come on, let's be realistic." The Rothko was his $85,000 pride and joy. It hung in his study where he met clients, serving as his ultimate proof of culture. He had 6 paintings in that room, totaling about $280,000, a figure he had proudly calculated and shared at Christmas back in 2014, right before asking me when I was going to get a real job. Now he was comparing my son's piece to his expensive collection and deeming it worthless. I stood up. There was nothing left to say, nothing that could fix what had just happened or undo his cruelty. I took the painting back from Gerard, who let it go without the slightest resistance, almost relieved to be rid of it. I took Jaime's hand, and we walked toward the doors. Behind us, Uncle George stood up so fast his chair screeched violently against the floor, shattering the quiet room. 18 people turned to look. "Melissa, wait," George called out. "Gerard, say something." My father's dismissive voice cut through the air. "Let her go, George. She's just overreacting again." I didn't stop, and I didn't look back. I didn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing my face. The valet brought my car around within 90 seconds. Ticket 1893. I gave him a $5 tip, all the cash I had left in my pocket. Jaime sat in the back seat in total silence, staring at the canvas beside him where the torn paper revealed the blue and gold swirls. During the drive home, Jaime didn't cry. I kept checking the rearview mirror, bracing for tears, but they never came. He just stared at his 2 weeks of hard work, at the gift his grandfather had called cheap. At 9:35 p.m., I hung the painting in his room, right opposite his bed. Jaime went through his bedtime routine completely silently. He brushed his teeth, put on his dinosaur pajamas, climbed into bed, and kept his eyes locked on that canvas. I sat in the living room with my phone, waiting for it to ring. Surely, once the guests left and he had time to reflect, Gerard would call. The phone remained silent. At 11:30 p.m., it buzzed with a text from Uncle George. "I am so sorry, Melissa. Your father was completely wrong. The painting is beautiful. Jaime is beautiful. If you need anything, I am always here." The next morning at 7:12 a.m., I replied with just 2 words, "Thank you." For the next 7 years, I didn't hear a single word from my father. By December 2016, just 2 weeks before Christmas, I was still waiting for a call or an apology. The phone stayed silent. No Christmas card, no gift for Jaime, and no call on Christmas morning. On December 23rd, Bradley called. The conversation lasted exactly 2 minutes and 18 seconds. I remember because I watched the timer on my screen. "Listen," Bradley said, "Dad is still upset about the scene you made. If you could just apologize." "Apologize for what?" I asked. "You know what I mean." I hung up, and that was the last time I spoke to my brother for 7 years. My father never called. Not for Christmas, not for Jaime's 6th birthday in March. Never. By January 2017, the reality set in. My father wasn't going to call. He was waiting for my apology, genuinely believing I was the one in the wrong. Because I didn't bow down, Gerard cut me out of his life completely. The rest of 2017 passed in total silence. 0 calls, 0 cards, 0 gifts. He acted as though I had never been his daughter and Jaime had never been his grandson. In May 2017, Jaime participated in a school play. He didn't have any lines. He just stood on stage holding a cardboard tree, but he managed to stay there for 8 full minutes without running off. For a child with his challenges, it was a massive victory. Uncle George came. He sat in the front row and clapped so hard his hands turned red. My father didn't show up. I hadn't invited him, but a small part of me had secretly hoped he might hear about it and surprise us. He didn't. George told me later that my father occasionally asked about me, only to cut himself off immediately, as if terrified of showing any vulnerability. "Did he ever ask about Jaime?" I inquired. George's silence told me everything I needed to know. That year, Bradley visited my father 52 times. Uncle George kept a written log of the names and dates, showing it to me in July just to prove I wasn't losing my mind. It was cold proof that my father had made his choice about which child mattered. Uncle George visited me every single Sunday. 52 visits. He gave me $200 in cash every month, totaling $2,400 over the year. It was well beyond what he could comfortably afford, yet he never once allowed me to talk about paying him back. In December 2017, George told me something unexpected. "Your father actually kept one thing from that birthday dinner, the brown paper that was wrapped around Jaime's painting. He keeps it in his desk drawer. I saw it when I was looking for a pen. I didn't know what to do with that information. It changed nothing." Gerard still hadn't picked up the phone. Then came 2018, 2019, and 2020. The years blurred together with the exact same pattern. 0 calls, 0 visits, 0 recognition. In June 2019, Bradley got married. The guest list had 150 names, but Melissa Lynch wasn't one of them. George found out and offered to skip the wedding in solidarity, but I insisted he go. Someone needed to represent our side of the family and bear witness. The wedding took place at the Ocean View Country Club, the exact same venue as my father's 60th birthday. Bradley and Vanessa stood at the altar right where table 1 had been, the very spot where Gerard had labeled my son's creation cheap. My father gave a speech, which George recorded on his phone and played for me later. I probably shouldn't have listened, but I did. "My son Bradley," Gerard's voice boomed with pride. A son who makes me proud every single day. A son who truly understands what family means. I was his daughter, but clearly I didn't fit his definition of family. In October 2019, my father suffered a minor medical scare. It wasn't life-threatening, but it should have been a wake-up call. Yet Bradley didn't bother telling me until October 29th, 21 days after it happened. "I didn't want to bother you," Bradley claimed defensively when I called him out. "Dad is fine now. He didn't want you worrying." As if we had been in regular contact, as if he had been a devoted father and grandfather all along, and the years of silence were just an illusion. During those years, Jaime asked about his grandfather 14 times, and every single question broke my heart. Why doesn't Grandpa visit us? Did I do something wrong? Is Grandpa sick? In November 2019, when Jaime turned 8, he typed a devastating question into his device. Did I make Grandpa sad? Is painting bad? I held him tight and lied. No, sweetie, Grandpa just hasn't realized how special you are yet. By 2020, I stopped expecting any change. I accepted that Jared had made his final choice on the night of his birthday, and that I had effectively lost my father. But that was exactly when Jaime started painting again. Between 2020 and 2023, something extraordinary happened. Jaime's spoken vocabulary grew from 12 words to 89, and his artwork flourished. He completed 23 pieces, each one abstract, beautiful, and deeply complex. Dr. Nguyen told me in 2021, "Melissa, you need to understand something. Jaime's art isn't just therapy anymore. It's communication, and what he is communicating is incredibly profound." In 2022, a local art teacher named Abigail Foster began volunteering at the Development Center. She was in her 60s with silver hair and a gentle disposition, having taught high school art for 30 years before retiring. She saw Jaime's work and offered to mentor him for 2 hours a week completely free of charge, calling it her retirement project. Under her guidance, Jaime's talent exploded. His patterns became vastly more intricate, and his color choices grew intensely deliberate. Mrs. Foster noted that he possessed an intuitive grasp of emotional color theory that most adult artists spend a lifetime trying to develop. In September 2022, Mrs. Foster asked for permission to show Jaime's portfolio to a colleague who was a professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I agreed, completely unaware that this single choice would rewrite our lives. On October 3, 2023 at 7:42 p.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a telemarketer, but something made me answer. "Melissa," a familiar, warm, yet highly professional female voice said. "It's Catherine Whitfield. I don't know if you remember me, but I taught your modern art seminar back in 2007. I need to talk to you about your son's paintings." Dr. Catherine Whitfield was my former professor from 15 years ago, the woman who taught me that art isn't just about aesthetics, but about truth and forcing people to see what they choose to ignore. I hadn't spoken to her since graduating in 2009. "I've seen Jaime's work," Catherine continued. "Mrs. Foster is an old friend of mine, and she sent me photos last month. Melissa, your son is an extraordinary talent." We spoke for 33 minutes. Catherine explained that she was now a curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago and had been tracking Jaime's development through Mrs. Foster. Then she brought up an idea. "The painting Jaime did when he was 5, Catherine said. "Mrs. Foster mentioned the piece he made for your father's birthday. Do you still have it?" "Yes," I replied. "It hangs in Jaime's room. Why?" "I want to put it up for auction." She explained the plan. It would be featured in a prestigious Sotheby's auction titled Emerging Voices Under 18. The estimated value was placed between $300,000 and $500,000. I could barely breathe. $500,000 for the piece my father dismissed as cheap. "Why do you think it's worth that much?" I managed to ask. Catherine paused for 8 seconds, the longest silence of our call, and a moment I examined closely later. "Melissa, Mrs. Foster sent me high-definition images. I analyzed the patterns, the color theory, and the mathematical precision hidden within the apparent chaos. Your son is a savant, and that painting, it's a masterpiece." Then she asked the question that shifted everything. "Does your father know about this?" I briefly summarized what happened that night. The word cheap, the 20 witnesses, and the 7 years of complete alienation. Catherine listened silently, pausing again before she spoke, her tone turning noticeably firmer. "Does he know about the auction?" "No," I said. "We haven't spoken in 7 years." "Why?" "Let's just keep it that way for now." Catherine and I talked for another 20 minutes. She reminded me of things I had put out of my mind, like how I had been her student from 2005 to 2009, earned a B+ in her seminar, and received her recommendation letter for my art therapy program. "You were one of the most intuitive students I ever taught," Catherine noted. "When you chose therapy over fine arts to help children like Jaime, I understood, but I always hoped you'd find a way back to the art world." She shared that she had become the museum curator 5 years ago, building a reputation for discovering raw talent and elevating artists traditionally overlooked by the mainstream art establishment. "I saw Jaime's painting on Mrs. Foster's social media on September 28th, Catherine explained. "She posted a photo of Jaime working, and that original piece was right there in the background. I recognized something in it instantly." "What did you recognize?" "The exact same thing I saw in your work 15 years ago," she said. "The truth." Catherine laid out the logistics. Jaime's original 2016 painting would be included in the Sotheby's auction just 6 weeks away, on November 18th, 2023. With the initial estimate at $300,000 to $500,000, a competitive bidding war could drive it even higher. After a standard 12% commission, the entirety of the remaining funds would belong entirely to the artist, to Jaime. "The funds will be placed directly into a trust," Catherine assured me, "securing Jaime's future, his education, his long-term care, and absolutely anything he might ever need." I sat there, completely unable to fully comprehend the numbers. $500,000. Even after the commission, that left $440,000, far more than I had earned over my entire 8-year career. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. Catherine remained silent for a moment. "Because 15 years ago you were a brilliant artist who gave up your own art to help children like Jaime. Because I've seen too many bright minds pushed aside simply because they don't fit into a traditional mold. Because your father called that masterpiece cheap, and he was completely wrong. And because..." She paused. "Because I can." "Melissa," Catherine's tone shifted, becoming deeply intent. "I need to ask you something. What exactly happened that night at your father's birthday dinner?" I told her everything. The 20 guests, Gerard holding up the canvas, the word cheap, the cruel comparison to the Rothko, Jaime's fingers digging into my arm, our silent exit, and the 7 long years of complete indifference. After I finished, Catherine was quiet for 8 full seconds. The silence stretched between us. I could hear her steady breathing on the other end of the line. "Does he know about the auction?" she asked. "No," I replied. "How could he? We haven't spoken a single word." "Perfect." Catherine's voice hardened into something unyielding and absolute. "Let's keep him completely in the dark for now." "Why?" "Because," Catherine said, "I am setting something in motion and I need you to trust me." 2 days later, on October 5th at 9:15 a.m., Catherine emailed me the consignment agreement, 12 pages of dense legal framework. I read every single line 3 times. Section 7.3 caught my eye. 100% of net proceeds shall be deposited directly into the Jaime Lynch Special Needs Trust. The consignor waives all personal rights to the proceeds and directs that the funds be used exclusively for the benefit of the minor child. I called Catherine immediately. "This clause means I won't receive a single penny." "Exactly," Catherine said. "The painting belongs to Jaime. The money should belong to Jaime. Do you disagree?" I didn't disagree. I signed the contract on October 7th at 3:22 p.m. and scanned it back to her. The next day, October 8th, Catherine sent a brief, cryptic email. "One more thing, I am preparing for what happens after the auction closes. You will understand when the time comes. Trust me." I had no idea what she meant, but 15 years ago, when she told me I had a gift, I chose to believe her. She had been right then, so I decided to trust her now. For 6 solid weeks, I kept the secret completely safe. I didn't tell my father, I didn't tell Bradley, I didn't post a single word on social media. I told absolutely no one except Uncle George, and I made him swear to absolute secrecy. On November 10th, Sotheby's published the official auction catalog. Jaime's painting was listed as Lot 24, titled Untitled, Blue and Gold 2016. Jaime Lynch, age 5 at the time of execution. Acrylic on canvas, 16 by 20 inches. Estimated value, $400,000 to $600,000. The catalog description read, "A rare and remarkable artistic expression of savant pattern recognition." The artist, diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at 18 months, demonstrates extraordinary spatial structure and emotional depth in this early career work. Uncle George called me that night. "The catalog is live online," he said. "Your father is going to see it eventually." "I know," I said. "Are you ready for this?" "No," I replied, "but it doesn't matter, it's already in motion." I wasn't ready. But ready or not, November 18th arrived. The catalog went live on November 10th, 2023, featuring 127 lots. Jaime's piece was lot 24 on page 34. By the next morning, Uncle George had seen it. By that afternoon, 3 different people had texted me screenshots. By that evening, Mrs. Foster shared the news on her social media. By the following day, practically everyone knew, except my father. Somehow, Gerard Lynch, the man who prided himself on being incredibly well-connected, who claimed to know everything about art, culture, and high society, completely missed the Sotheby's publication. Or perhaps he saw it but simply failed to connect the dots. Maybe he didn't even remember the full name of a 5-year-old boy. Maybe he had erased Jaime so thoroughly from his mind that the name Jaime Lynch meant absolutely nothing to him. I waited for the phone to ring, but it remained quiet. On November 15th, just 3 days before the auction, Bradley called me for the first time in 7 years. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Melissa, it's Bradley. I saw something in an auction catalog. A painting by someone named Jaime Lynch. Is that your Jaime? Call me back." I never called him back. November 18th, 2023, 6 p.m. I parked outside Sotheby's at 1334 York Avenue in New York. Jaime sat in the passenger seat. He was 12 now, much taller and quieter than ever. He still didn't speak much, but his vocabulary had grown to 89 spoken words, and he could type hundreds more. Catherine met us at a side entrance. She looked sharp and professional in a black tailored suit with her hair pinned back, but her eyes were incredibly warm as she embraced me. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I honestly don't know," I said. "Good," she replied. "Honesty is far better than false confidence." She led us down corridors lined with multi-million-dollar masterpieces, past focused staff members carrying tablets, and into a private viewing room. It was furnished with comfortable seating and a monitor displaying a live feed of the main auction floor. "We have 12 major media outlets here tonight," Catherine noted. "Vogue, Art News, The New York Times. The moment this piece sells, Jaime's story will be out there. The press is going to want an interview." "I don't want to talk to the media," I said flatly. "You don't have to," Catherine reassured me. "I will handle them. I will handle absolutely everything. You just need to keep trusting me." At 7:15 p.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I let it go straight to voicemail. Later, I found out it was Bradley. At 7:30 p.m., the auction officially opened. I watched the monitor closely. There were 156 registered bidders, 82 present on the floor, and 74 participating via phone lines. Jaime sat right beside me, his hands neatly folded on his lap, silently watching the screen. We waited for lot 24. At 8:22 p.m., the auctioneer called the lot. Moving on to lot 24, untitled, Blue and Gold by Jaime Lynch. Created when the artist was just 5 years old, this piece is an extraordinary example of savant pattern recognition within the autism spectrum. May we open the bidding at $500,000? A paddle went up immediately on the floor, paddle 23. 500,000. Do I hear 600,000? Another paddle, paddle 65. 600,000. 700,000. Phone bidder 103 chimed in. 780,000. The bids climbed rapidly. 800,000. 900,000. 1 million. Jaime reached out and took my hand. His fingers were cold and trembling slightly. 1.2 million. 1.5 million. 1.8 million. Phone bidder 156 entered the fray aggressively, throwing down a massive bid. 2 million. Paddle 91 fired back. 2.2 million. Phone bidder 156 didn't hesitate. 2.5 million. The room fell completely silent. The holder of paddle 91 shook his head and dropped out. $2,500,000, the auctioneer announced, looking around the room. Any further advancements on 2.5? Phone bidder 134 pushed it to 2.6 million. Phone bidder 156 countered instantly. 2.8 million. 2.8 million, the auctioneer stated. Going once, going twice. Phone bidder 134 took it to 2.9 million. Phone bidder 156 paused for 10 long seconds. Then, 3 million. A collective murmur rippled through the hall. I could hear it clearly through the monitor, a room full of people catching their breath all at once. $3 million, the auctioneer called out. Going once, going twice. Sold to phone bidder 156. The room erupted into applause. Jaime instantly covered his ears from the sudden noise. The painting my father had called cheap had just sold for $3 million. At 9:33 p.m., my phone rang. I looked down at the screen and saw the name, my father. For the first time in 7 years, Gerard Lynch was calling me. I stepped out into the quiet corridor to answer. Melissa. There was no greeting, no, how are you? Just my name, delivered with cold authority. I just saw the Sotheby's results online. 3 million. That painting was a birthday gift to me. Legally, it is my property. I expect the funds transferred to my account the moment they clear. I said absolutely nothing. Are you listening to me? Gerard demanded. I hear you, I said quietly, and I hung up the phone. It rang again immediately. Bradley, I ignored it. Then another call came through from an unrecognized number, which I let go to voicemail. I found out later it was Hugh Sanderson, my father's attorney, the man who had sat silently 3 tables away while Gerard publicly humiliated my son. I walked back into the private room where Catherine was waiting. She closed the door behind me. He called, I told her. I know, Catherine said calmly. I expected him to. How did you— Melissa, Catherine interrupted gently. Phone bidder 156 has a specific request. They want to meet you in person on December 15th at the exhibition opening in Chicago. They have a statement to make. Who is it? I asked. Catherine offered a small, knowing smile. It was the exact same expression she gave me 15 years ago when I asked if my final project was good enough, right before she handed me an A. Someone who, like me, has been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time, she said. On the morning of November 19th, I woke up to find 6 voicemails waiting for me. Gerard, at 11:47 p.m. the previous night. Melissa, call me back. We need to discuss this situation immediately. Gerard again, at 7:05 a.m. I know you're avoiding me. This isn't over. That money is legally mine, and I will pursue this to the fullest extent. Bradley, at 6:33 a.m. Melissa, pick up. Dad is losing his mind. Call him back right now. Bradley again, at 8:12 a.m. This is completely ridiculous. $3 million. You can't just shut us out like this. Bradley at 9:01 a.m. Look, I get it. You're angry with Dad, but we're talking about $3 million here. Just give him half, and we can put all of this behind us. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. You don't want a legal battle. Think about Jaime. Think about what the media will do with this. Hugh Sanderson, at 8:45 a.m. Ms. Lynch, this is Hugh Sanderson of Sanderson & Klein. I am representing your father in a legal matter regarding a recent asset sale. Please call my office at your earliest convenience. I deleted 5 of those messages, but I listened to Bradley's final voicemail 3 times. Think about Jaime. Think about what the media will do with this. My own brother was weaponizing my son, implying I should pay off our father just to avoid bad press. I didn't return a single call. In his message, Bradley suggested giving our father half. $1.5 million. As if 7 years of complete abandonment could be easily erased by a wire transfer. As if my son's dignity had a price tag, and that price was exactly 50%. Bradley used Jaime's name twice as leverage. You don't want him dragged through a lawsuit, do you? For 7 years, my brother hadn't asked a single question about Jaime's well-being, but suddenly, when millions were involved, he was deeply invested. I thought about calling Bradley back to tell him exactly what I thought of his proposal, but I chose silence instead. Instead, I called Uncle George. He answered on the very first ring. I saw the auction results, George said immediately. Melissa, I am incredibly proud of Jaime, but listen to me. Gerard called me. I know, I said. He called me early this morning talking about lawsuits. I can't believe he actually said— George paused on the line. He told me, I gave that boy a platform and now he owes me. Those were his exact words. I closed my eyes. Of course. My father truly believed that taking a 5-year-old's gift, holding it up to humiliate him in front of 20 people, and calling it cheap was giving him a platform. Trauma as an opportunity. Hugh Sanderson is already pulling case law, George warned. The principle of completed gifts, transfer of ownership. Your father genuinely thinks he has a case. Does he? I asked. I don't know, George admitted, but he's absolutely going to try. Melissa, let me go talk to him. No, I cut in. Don't go near him. Please, I need to handle this myself. George was quiet for a second. Catherine called me yesterday. She told me to tell you not to worry. She has a plan. What plan? She wouldn't say. She just told me to tell you to stay strong, and that everything will become clear on December 15th. The exhibition opening in Chicago was 3.5 weeks away. On November 20th at 10:15 a.m., a courier delivered a certified letter from Sanderson and Klein on Park Avenue. I signed for it and opened it at the kitchen table while Shymi ate breakfast. Dear Ms. Lynch, the letter began, this firm represents Mr. Gerard Lynch regarding the painting titled Untitled, Blue and Gold, which was sold at Sotheby's on November 18, 2023, for the sum of $3 million. I kept reading through the dense legal jargon. It argued the classic principles of gift law. Physical delivery constitutes a binding transfer of ownership. 20 witnesses could verify that the item was handed over to Gerard Lynch on November 12, 2016. Under applicable law, title transferred the moment it was delivered and accepted. The subsequent unauthorized sale of the property, the letter claimed, constituted conversion of his asset. We demand the full remittance of the auction proceeds within 72 hours, failing which legal proceedings will be initiated immediately. 72 hours. 3 days to turn over $3 million to my father. The 3-page letter was signed by Hugh Sanderson, the same man who had watched a little boy get crushed without saying a single word. I called Catherine, and she answered within 2 rings. He sent a formal demand letter, I said. I know, Catherine replied smoothly. We expected this. Melissa, take a deep breath. I have been planning for this exact scenario for 3 years. 3 years? Your father rejected that painting in front of a room full of witnesses, Catherine explained. He physically handed it back to you. He labeled it cheap and publicly devalued it. In the eyes of the law, that gift was never legally accepted. Ownership never transferred away from Jaime. Hugh Sanderson knows this perfectly well. He is completely bluffing. How can you be so sure? Because I consulted the museum's legal counsel 3 days before the auction. We anticipated this exact reaction, and the legal assessment is absolute. A rejected gift means ownership remains with the creator. Your father has 0 legal standing. I felt an immense weight lift from my chest. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Because I needed your reactions to his calls to be entirely genuine. I needed your father to believe he actually had an advantage so he would commit himself fully to this path. What path? The path to December 15th, Catherine said. Trust me, Melissa, on December 15th everything comes to light. I hung up and looked at the letter again. 72 hours. I chose not to reply. November 20th, November 21st, November 22nd. On November 23rd, the deadline arrived. I let it pass in total silence. Over those 3 days, my father called 11 times, and I blocked every single one. Bradley sent 8 text messages. I read them all but never typed a response. Bradley's texts alternated between forced reasoning and outright blame. Just talk to Dad. There's no reason to make this complicated. You're being selfish. Think about the family name. It's $3 million and you won't even pick up. Are you seriously going to fight a legal battle over money you didn't even earn? On November 21st at 4:02 p.m., I finally sent one short reply to his last text. He didn't earn it either. Uncle George visited us every single day during that countdown, bringing coffee, checking in, and simply sitting with us quietly on the final day. On November 23rd at 10:15 a.m., the legal deadline expired. I had sent no funds, no signature, and no acknowledgement. At 10:16 a.m., exactly 1 minute after the deadline passed, my phone rang. It wasn't Gerard, Bradley, or Hugh Sanderson. It was a reporter. Ms. Lynch, this is Jessica Alvarez from Art News. I'm calling regarding the recent Sotheby's auction. Your father has provided our outlet with a statement claiming the artwork is his property and that you are withholding the proceeds unlawfully. He is calling it a theft. Do you have a response? I stood in my kitchen, the phone pressed hard against my ear, processing the news that my father had taken this straight to the press. No comment, I said and ended the call. I immediately opened my browser, searched the outlet, and found the article that had been published at 9 a.m. that morning. The headline read, Family Property Dispute Erupts Over Autism Artist's $3 million Auction Sale. I read every single word, every single fabrication. The piece featured a direct interview with my father, conducted the night before. His version of reality was completely unrecognizable. "My grandson created this painting for me out of pure love," Gerard was quoted as saying. "I treasured it as a family heirloom for 7 years. Then my daughter took it without my permission and sold it for millions. I am simply seeking what is right. This isn't about the money. I don't need the money. It's about accountability. Family is supposed to mean something." My father, who hadn't reached out once in 7 years, who missed every milestone, and who made his grandson feel completely worthless, was now lecturing the public on family values. The article painted Gerard as a devoted grandfather blindsided by a calloused daughter. He claimed to have cherished the painting, proudly displaying it as a symbol of his grandson's incredible talent. He conveniently omitted the word cheap. He left out the 20 witnesses, the public humiliation, the comparison to his collection, and the 7 years of absolute silence. Instead, he twisted the narrative into a story about an ungrateful child taking advantage of an aging parent. The article had only been live for 2 hours, but it already had hundreds of shares and comments, most of which fell squarely on his side. "This is terrible. How could anyone do that to their own father? Family should come first. She should be ashamed. This poor man sounds completely heartbroken. I hope justice is served." A few commenters questioned the timeline, asking why he waited 7 years to assert his rights, but their voices were quickly drowned out by the wave of public condemnation. My father had seized control of the story, and the public believed him. For the first time in 7 years, a small part of me wanted to just walk away. At 2:30 p.m. that afternoon, Catherine called. "I read the piece," she said gently. "He lied about absolutely everything," I replied, my voice shaking. "I know," Catherine said. "Melissa, there's something you need to know. 3 years ago, George told me exactly what happened at that dinner party. The insult, the witnesses, all of it. I have been preparing for this exact moment ever since." "What do you mean?" "I didn't just facilitate the purchase of Jaime's painting," Catherine revealed. "I secured the opportunity to bring the absolute truth to light in front of everyone. Since 2020, I've been documenting Jaime's journey, working alongside Mrs. Foster, building a complete archive." "You were phone bidder 156, I stated, realizing the truth. "Yes, I committed the $3 million. "For the truth," Catherine affirmed. "For Jaime's future, and for yours. 15 years ago, you were one of my best students, but life handed you a profoundly difficult choice. You chose your son. Now, I am choosing to stand by both of you." I sat back in my chair, letting the magnitude of her words wash over me. "December 15th, Catherine said firmly. "The exhibition opening at the Chicago Museum. We have 300 invited guests and 15 media outlets attending, including Jessica Alvarez from Art News. Your father's false narrative will be corrected publicly. We are going to answer them with undeniable evidence, with Jaime's own voice, and with the truth." "How?" I asked. "Trust me," Catherine said. "Just hold on a little longer." December 15th, 2023. The Central Hall of the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art hosted the opening of the Emerging Voices exhibition. Catherine had spent months, perhaps years, curating this event. The gallery showcased the work of 12 young artists, all under 18, each immensely talented but previously overlooked by mainstream art institutions. Jaime's canvas served as the centerpiece of the entire exhibition, mounted on a massive 20-foot wall under dedicated spotlights, its blue and gold spirals visible from across the entire hall. The 300 guests included prominent art collectors, museum patrons, critics, journalists, and academics, the structural pillars of the art community. 15 media outlets were confirmed, including Jessica Alvarez. Catherine's opening address was scheduled for 8 p.m. She hadn't shared her speech with me, telling me only to be there, to keep Jaime backstage, and to trust her completely. That morning at 10 a.m., she texted me, "Tonight, Melissa, everything you've carried for 7 years ends tonight. Jaime's painting will speak for itself, and so will I." I didn't know her exact plan, but I showed up. By 7:30 p.m., Jaime and I were in a small backstage room, watching the Central Hall through a monitor as guests arrived, champagne was served, and crowds gathered around Jaime's work. Right at 7:30 p.m., I saw him on the screen. My father, Gerard Lynch. He was 67 now, his hair completely silver, wearing an expensive $3,200 Tom Ford suit, the exact same brand he wore to Bradley's wedding. He walked in alongside Bradley and Vanessa, presenting a united front. My father walked directly to Jaime's painting, holding court and striking up conversations with nearby guests. I couldn't hear his words initially, but his body language spoke volumes. Expansive gestures, a proud stance, the posture of a man who firmly believed he owned a priceless asset. Uncle George texted me at 7:45 p.m. "Your father RSVP'd at the last minute. Bradley told him about tonight. I'm so sorry, I tried to keep it quiet." I replied, "It's okay. Catherine knew he would come." For the next 15 minutes, I kept my eyes fixed on my father via the monitor. He spoke with multiple guests, positioning himself prominently to ensure everyone saw him standing with his grandson's creation. By 8 p.m., the monitor's audio feed captured his voice clearly as he spoke loudly enough for the surrounding crowd to hear. "Yes, that's my grandson's work. Extraordinary talent, isn't it? Neurodiversity is a fascinating thing. Our family has supported his artistic development from day one." Continuous support. 7 years of absolute absence, yet in front of 300 witnesses, my father was actively rewriting history. Uncle George came backstage to find me at 7:55 p.m. "Your father is telling everyone he funded Jaime's entire art education." "Let him speak," I said calmly. George looked caught off guard. "Catherine has a plan," I explained. "Let him keep talking. The further he goes, the clearer the reality will be." At exactly 8 p.m., Catherine stepped up to the podium. Dressed in a sharp navy suit with her hair pinned back, she projected absolute professional authority, the kind of person you implicitly trust with the truth. "Good evening." Her voice resonated through the central hall, instantly quieting the 300 guests. "Thank you for joining us for the opening of Emerging Voices. This exhibition celebrates 12 artists under the age of 18 who see the world differently, creating immense beauty from perspectives society often overlooks, proving that talent takes many forms." I watched my father on the monitor. Standing 15 feet from the podium with his arms crossed, he looked entirely self-satisfied, as if the speech were validating his presence. "But among these works," Catherine continued, her tone shifting to something deeply serious, "there is one piece that represents far more than raw talent. It represents a defining moment in what we choose to value. Wealth, status, or the absolute truth." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Guests leaned in closer as Catherine looked directly toward my father. "I want to share the true story behind this canvas." "On November 12, 2016, Catherine said, a 5-year-old boy on the autism spectrum spent his final afternoon finishing a painting. He had dedicated 2 hours every single day for 2 weeks to this piece, 14 days, exactly 127 brushstrokes. The room was completely pin-drop silent. 6 cameras were recording, and over 1,000 people were watching the live stream via the museum's website. "The boy spoke very few words," Catherine continued. "Communication was a daily struggle for him, but he deeply wanted to create a gift for his grandfather. He remembered his grandfather's favorite colors from years prior, blue and gold. So he poured all his focus and skill into a beautiful, deeply meaningful piece using those exact colors." I watched my father's face on the screen. His expression of confidence began to falter, replaced by visible uncertainty. "He presented the painting to his grandfather at a milestone birthday dinner," Catherine stated, her voice echoing clearly. "There were 20 witnesses present. The grandfather unwrapped the gift, looked at it for 8 seconds, held it up, and declared a single word." Catherine paused, letting the silence hang heavily over the audience for several seconds. "Cheap." The word landed with immense weight. A collective, audible gasp rippled through the gallery, followed by urgent whispering and visible shock. "He called his 5-year-old grandson's dedicated effort cheap in front of 20 people," Catherine said directly. "The boy stood right there and understood every word. He had spent 2 weeks creating something out of pure love, using his grandfather's favorite colors, and it was dismissed as worthless." My father's face had turned completely pale under the gallery lights, captured clearly by the recording crew and broadcast to the online audience. Bradley grabbed Vanessa's arm, attempting to steer her toward the exit, but their path was blocked by the dense crowd of guests. Catherine pressed forward. "The boy and his mother left quietly that night without making a scene. But do you know what followed? For 7 long years, that grandfather never placed a single call, never visited, never sent a birthday card, and never acknowledged his grandson's existence. 7 years of absolute silence until..." Catherine offered a measured, intentional smile. "Until last month, when this exact painting sold at Sotheby's for $3 million. Immediately, the grandfather called. He asserted a legal claim over the property, hired legal counsel, contacted media outlets, and fabricated a story portraying himself as a caring grandparent betrayed by an ungrateful daughter. He claimed to have treasured the piece for 7 years, stating that family is supposed to mean something. The silence in the room was absolute. Every eye and camera turned directly toward my father. "The grandfather is actually with us tonight," Catherine announced. "Mr. Lynch, would you care to address the room?" My father stepped forward, his face flushed and his jaw set tightly. "Excuse me," he spoke up loudly, attempting to regain control. "This is a complete misunderstanding. The painting was a gift to me, and this narrative is entirely distorted." Catherine stood her ground, maintaining possession of the microphone but gesturing for him to continue. "By all means," she said smoothly. "Let him speak. Everyone deserves to hear both sides. Please, Mr. Lynch." Security personnel quietly shifted closer, keeping a watchful distance just in case. My father took the microphone, facing the cameras and the crowd. Used to commanding boardrooms and dictating terms, he cleared his throat deliberately. "I believe there is a significant misunderstanding here," he began, his voice tightly controlled. "The painting was indeed a gift from my grandson. Perhaps my expression of gratitude that evening did not fully reflect my appreciation. It was a high-pressure evening with major business partners present, and my response may have lacked the warmth it deserved." He minimized the event entirely, refusing to admit any real fault. "However, the artwork remains my legal property," he asserted firmly. "And I want to know who authorized turning a private family matter into a public spectacle. This is entirely inappropriate." "I authorized it," Catherine answered, her clear voice cutting cleanly through his defense. "Because I am the buyer, Gerard." The gallery fell into absolute stunned silence. "Phone bidder 156, Catherine declared openly. "That was me. I committed the $3 million to purchase this piece." Total shock registered across my father's face. He had been completely blind to this reality. "I was Melissa's professor 15 years ago," Catherine explained to the room. "I have followed Jaime's development for 3 years, documenting his progress alongside his art teacher. I purchased this painting because I recognized exactly what it represented, the profound depth that you completely failed to see." Gerard's voice strained. "And what exactly am I missing?" Catherine smiled calmly. "Let us show you." She signaled the technical team, and the gallery lights dimmed. A massive 20-foot presentation screen descended from the ceiling in full view of everyone. "This is Jaime Lynch today," Catherine announced. 12 years old. He still speaks infrequently, but he has something vital to share about this canvas. My father froze in place. Bradley stopped trying to leave, and Vanessa appeared visibly shaken. "Speech remains difficult for Jaime," Catherine noted gently, "but he communicates beautifully through typing. We recorded this video 3 weeks ago on November 20th, the exact day your legal counsel issued your demand letter, Mr. Lynch." The screen illuminated, showing Jaime sitting in a quiet room at the museum in front of a keyboard, his expression completely focused. The video lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I had wept during the editing process, and now 300 people, including my father, were watching it unfold. The footage began with Jaime's hands resting on the keys. As he typed, text appeared on the screen, accompanied by my own recorded voice reading his words softly in the background. "My name is Jaime Lynch. I am 12 years old. I am on the autism spectrum." The words were simple, clear, and entirely his own. "When I was 5, I made a painting for my grandfather's birthday. I worked on it for 14 afternoons, from October 28th to November 10th, 2016. Images from the creation process appeared on screen, documented day by Mrs. Foster. "I chose blue because I felt sad that my grandfather didn't come to visit us. I chose gold because I hoped he would like it. I wanted him to see what I saw inside my mind when I thought about family." On the monitor, I saw my father jaw tighten, his hands clenched into fists. "I painted for 2 hours every day in room 103 at the development center. My mom was there and Dr. Nguyen was there. They didn't help me paint, they just watched." The video showed a 5-year-old Jaime holding his brush, intently focused as the blue and gold spirals gradually formed on the canvas. Then the text shifted. "I remember what happened at the party. I remember the dinner, November 12th, 2016, Ocean View Country Club, Table 7, seats 18 and 19. The details were completely precise, specifics an ordinary observer might forget, but Jaime remembered everything. I counted 20 people at the party. I gave the painting to my grandfather. He unwrapped it, looked at it for 8 seconds, and said it was cheap." The word appeared in massive, stark letters on the screen, cheap. I knew what cheap meant. It meant not good enough. It meant without value. It meant I was without value. The audience watched in absolute unbroken stillness. We left. My mom took my hand and we drove home. She hung the painting in my room. My grandfather never called again. Jaime's hands paused briefly on the keyboard before continuing. I counted the days from November 12, 2016 to November 18, 2023. It is exactly 2,556 days. My grandfather went 2,556 days without calling. The number filled the screen. 2,556. My father looked completely drained of color. Bradley lowered his head, and Vanessa was visibly crying. But Jaime wasn't finished. I want to explain what the painting means. The screen split, showing Jaime on one side and the digital breakdown of the canvas on the other. The painting has 127 brushstrokes. I counted them. Every single line has a meaning. Digital overlays highlighted specific spirals and intersections of color. The blue spirals represent 1,278 days. That is exactly how long I waited from the day I was born until my 5th birthday for my grandfather to come see me. The camera zoomed in on the blue patterns, revealing a precise structural sequence, the Fibonacci progression, which Dr. Nguyen had recognized, though Jaime had painted it purely by intuition. The gold spirals represent 23 times. That is exactly how many times I asked my mom when grandfather was coming before I finally stopped asking. 23 distinct gold spirals extended outward from the center. Where the blue and the gold touch, right here, that is where sadness and hope meet. It is the moment when you feel sad, but you still keep hoping. It is when it hurts, but you still choose to love. The focus rested on the absolute center of the piece, where the blue and gold interlaced to form a beautiful new structure. That place is called love. Jaime's typed words read, "I painted love for my grandfather. He called it cheap." The room remained absolutely dead silent. A frozen, breathtaking quiet locked the crowd for 6 solid seconds. Not a single sound, not a movement, nothing. Then, a sudden, audible gasp broke the spell. It came from a woman in the front row. Instantly, whispers began to ripple through the gallery as the 300 guests fully processed what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a collection of random brushstrokes. It was a deeply emotional, mathematically precise masterpiece. It was the work of a true savant, and Gerard Lynch had dismissed it as cheap. On screen, Jaime's hands moved across the keyboard again for the final section of the video. "I want to ask my grandfather a question." The entire audience held its breath. "Why did you say my love was cheap?" The question hovered in the air, filling the silent gallery as the text remained on screen. "Did I do something wrong? I worked so hard. I spent 14 days on it. I used your favorite colors and I painted exactly what I felt. Was that a mistake?" On the monitor, I could see tears streaming down my father's face. Genuine, undeniable tears. 6 cameras captured his reaction from every angle, broadcasting it to over 1,000 people online. "Maybe you were afraid of me because I am different. People are always afraid of what they don't understand. But I don't understand how you could just stop loving me for 2,556 days. Then Jaime's final line appeared. "But I still love you. Does that make me cheap too?" The words lingered on the screen for 8 full seconds before the video faded out, leaving only a final shot of 12-year-old Jaime looking directly into the lens. His expression was completely neutral. No anger, no bitterness, just an honest question. "Does that make me cheap too?" The screen faded to black. The 300 guests stood frozen, staring at the empty screen while my father stood overwhelmed by his own tears. Catherine walked back up to the podium. The immense impact of Jaime's words kept the entire room completely captivated. "When I committed $3 million to purchase this piece," Catherine announced, her voice steady and resolute, "I did so with a strict, non-negotiable contract clause." She held up an official, legally binding document bearing a prominent stamp. 100% of the proceeds, totaling $2,640,000 after commission, has been deposited directly into a secure trust for Jaime. The Jaime Lynch Special Needs Trust. It is managed by an independent trustee, completely irrevocable, and legally binding for life. She turned her gaze toward my father, who was still standing motionless, tears clearly visible on his face. "This fund will fully cover Jaime's education, his ongoing therapy, his art supplies, and his entire future. It ensures he has absolutely everything he needs to keep creating, keep communicating, and keep sharing his unique view of the world with us. Catherine's tone grew even firmer. Mr. Lynch, you have claimed legal ownership over this artwork, but under the law, a gift requires proper acceptance. You openly and publicly rejected this gift in front of 20 witnesses. You labeled it cheap and you handed it back. Ownership never transferred. This painting has always belonged to Jaime. Your legal counsel knew this all along. They were completely bluffing. Seated in the fourth row, Hugh Sanderson stared down at his hands, completely silent. Furthermore, Catherine continued, you have zero moral claim here. You have no right to claim this boy's hard work, no right to claim his love, and absolutely no right to profit from a talent you actively chose to devalue. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the crowd. Mr. Lynch, you wanted your money. You went to the media and told the world a story about being a loving grandfather betrayed by an ungrateful daughter. You claimed that family is supposed to mean something. Catherine's eyes were completely steady, her voice remarkably calm. You were right about one thing. Family is supposed to mean something. But you no longer get to define what that meaning is. Jaime defines it. Melissa defines it. The people who stayed, the ones who chose to love him unconditionally when you turned your back, they are the ones who decide what family truly means. The gallery completely erupted. It wasn't just standard applause, it felt like a massive, collective release of tension, an overwhelming wave of validation and agreement. A single person started the applause. It was Uncle George standing at the back, clapping slowly and deliberately, his hands making a loud, resonant sound. Within moments, someone else joined in, and then another. Seconds later, all 300 people were on their feet, delivering a thunderous standing ovation. Camera flashes lit up the room in a continuous blur as the applause filled the space. For 2 minutes and 30 seconds, the ovation continued without slowing down. My father stood frozen in the center of the room, completely surrounded by the applause, with cameras trained on his face as everyone witnessed his public accountability. At 8:16 p.m., he turned around and saw me. I had walked out from the backstage area, standing with my hand tightly holding Jaime's. Our eyes met for the first time in 7 years. It was our very first moment of direct eye contact since November 12, 2016. My father took a single step toward me, his mouth opening slightly as if to say something. Then he stopped, turned away, and walked straight out of the building. Bradley's seat was already empty. He had quietly slipped away earlier. Vanessa followed closely behind my father, and just like that, all three of them disappeared into the night. Uncle George made his way through the crowd, wrapping his arms tightly around Jaime and me. "You did it," he whispered. "The truth is finally out there." The applause sustained for another 2 minutes and 45 seconds before slowly tapering off. Catherine looked over at me from the podium, sharing a quiet, completely satisfied smile. We had brought the absolute truth into the light in front of everyone, backed by undeniable evidence, Jaime's own voice, and 6 recording cameras. My father's fabrications were completely dismantled, leaving only the real story standing. By 10:30 p.m., the central hall was empty. The 300 guests had gone home, the media had their exclusive coverage, and the cameras were packed away. Only 4 of us remained: Catherine, Uncle George, Jaime, and myself. We sat on folding chairs directly beneath Jaime's canvas. The blue and gold spirals caught the light from the overhead spotlight, looking incredibly beautiful, deeply precious, and undeniably valuable. Jaime typed a short message on his communication device and turned the screen to show me. "Is Grandpa sad now?" I looked down at my 12-year-old son, who was fully old enough to understand the weight of what had happened. He knew we had publicly exposed his grandfather's past actions, and he was holding a complex mix of emotions about it. "I think he is, sweetie," I answered honestly. Jaime typed one final thought. "Good. Maybe now he knows what it feels like to be called cheap." My son, who had been dismissed, abandoned, and left to count every single day of neglect, still possessed the capacity to paint hope alongside his sadness. With just a few simple words, he had delivered a flawless sense of justice. Catherine handed me her phone, showing me that the art news article had already been completely updated. The new headline read, "Museum Curator Exposes 7 Years of Family Neglect Directed at Savant Artist." Jessica Alvarez had issued a full correction, an apology, and a complete retraction of my father's claims. Within 45 minutes, the updated article had been shared thousands of times, and video clips from the exhibition were rapidly going viral across social media, pulling in tens of thousands of views in just a couple of hours. The truth was moving far faster than the lie ever could. At 11:02 p.m., my phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw the name, Gerard. I chose not to answer. It wasn't until I got home later that night that I finally listened to the voicemail in the quiet of Jaime's room, while he slept peacefully beneath the painting that changed everything. My father's voice sounded completely broken, hollow, and barely recognizable. "Melissa, it's Dad, A long, heavy 8-second silence followed. Just the sound of unsteady breathing as a man tried, and completely failed, to hold back his tears. I watched Jaime's video. I heard every single word. I knew, but I didn't realize what I put you through. Both of you." His voice completely cracked. "I am so sorry. I know it's not enough. I know an apology can't undo 7 years. It can't erase what I said, what I did, or what I failed to do." Another pause followed, this one even longer, a heavy 12 seconds. "Can I see him, please? I need to see my grandson. I need to tell him I was wrong. I need him to know that when it came to him, to you, to what actually matters, I was completely blind." The voicemail timestamp showed a total of 138 seconds. It took Gerard 98 seconds to say what he should have said in 5 seconds 7 years ago. "I am so sorry." I listened to it 3 times, then I deleted it. I didn't call him back, at least not that night. The next morning at 6:15 a.m., a sharp knock at the door woke me. It was an express courier with a delivery that cost $85. Inside the envelope was thick, expensive stationery bearing my father's handwriting. It was a 3-page letter written with a shaky hand that lacked his usual commanding presence. "Dear Melissa, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. Last night, I watched Jaime's video 12 times. 12 times. And with every single viewing, the reality of my actions became clearer. I was afraid. I was afraid of your son because he was different. I was terrified that I wouldn't know how to love him correctly, or that I would fail as the grandfather of a child with special needs. So, I chose not to try. I chose to completely close my heart to him. I kept telling myself that you were just being dramatic that night, that you made a scene and overreacted. But it was me. It was always me. An apology will never be enough, but it is all I have right now. I am sorry for calling his painting cheap. I am sorry for the 7 years of complete silence. I am sorry for missing his childhood, for missing the chance to know him, and for losing you. I don't know if you will ever let me see him. I don't know if I have the right to ask. But I am begging you, please let me see my grandson. Let me tell him I was wrong. Your father, Gerard. I read it 3 times, placed it in a drawer, and shut it away. The following day, December 17th, brought a different kind of message. At 9:15 a.m., an email arrived from Bradley with the subject line, "Look what you've done. Melissa, I don't know what you thought you were achieving, but Dad hasn't eaten in 2 days. He is completely broken. You could have handled this privately. Instead, you publicly humiliated him in front of 300 people and the media. You turned a family matter into a public circus. Congratulations, you got your validation. You made Dad cry on camera and ruined his reputation. I hope it was worth it. He wants to see Jaime, and you should let him. He's 67 years old. He made a mistake 7 years ago, and people make mistakes. Your refusal to speak to him is just cold and spiteful. The fact that this family is entirely shattered is on you. Dad is miserable. I'm incredibly disappointed in you, and honestly, I want nothing to do with someone who could treat their own father this way. Don't contact me again." 487 words. Bradley mentioned our father's distress 14 times, but not once did he mention the impact on Jaime. I forwarded the email to Uncle George without a single comment. He called me immediately. "Bradley has always been blind to the reality of this family," George said. "Don't let his words get to you." "They don't," I replied, and I meant it. Bradley's opinion had stopped mattering 7 years ago. I never replied to that email. On December 18th, Catherine called and asked to meet at a cafe near the museum. She pushed a folder across the table. "A job offer," she said. "Curator for the Neurodivergent Artists Initiative. You'll build the program from the ground up, selecting artists, designing exhibitions, and bringing hidden stories to light." I opened the folder to find a contract offering an annual salary of $185,000, a full benefits package, and a $15,000 annual education budget. It was more than 3 times my current income. "You are the perfect fit," Catherine noted. "You understand these artists. You live in their world. You can fundamentally change how this museum handles accessibility, representation, and true value. I closed the folder and gently slid it back to her. Catherine, I appreciate this more than you know. But my place is with the children at the development center. They need me far more than a museum does. Catherine smiled, as if she had anticipated my choice all along and was deeply proud of it. I knew you'd say that, she said warmly, but I had to ask. She then handed me a smaller envelope. This is the first distribution from Jaime's trust. I opened it to find a letter from the independent trustee Catherine had appointed, Thomas Brennan, a professional completely removed from family ties or conflicts of interest. The letter confirmed a monthly $1,200 allocation for approved therapy expenses. The principal remained entirely protected, projected to grow at an annual rate of 6%, putting the trust's estimated value at $4.1 million by Jaime's 18th birthday. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't have to choose between paying for Jaime's therapy and buying groceries. The development center even gave me a small raise the following week, bringing my salary to $54,500. It was just a $2,500 bump, but it was their way of showing solidarity and recognizing everything we had overcome. I didn't take Catherine's job, but I held on to the future she helped secure for Jaime, a future his grandfather had tried to dismiss, but one that was now entirely safe. And that was more than enough. June 15, 2024 marked Jaime's second gallery showing. This venue was intimate, accommodating only 80 guests, and treated the work with deep respect. The exhibition featured 12 new paintings he created between January and May, each exploring the intricate relationships between color, emotion, and memory. Blue, gold, red, and green woven into complex patterns, a brilliant mathematical precision hidden beneath layers of apparent chaos. The museum placard read, Jaime Lynch, age 12, artist. These 12 works, created between January and May 2024, explore the intersection of color, emotion, and memory. The artist, who is on the autism spectrum, communicates primarily through his art. 4 media outlets attended the event, delivering respectful coverage focused entirely on Jaime's remarkable talent rather than seeking sensational headlines or bringing up my father. Jaime's spoken vocabulary had expanded to 156 words, a major step up from the 89 words he knew 6 months prior. His confidence had grown even more. Dr. Nguyen noted that the December exhibition had offered him a deep sense of validation. He finally felt truly heard. Uncle George was there, of course, standing proudly in front of every canvas, deeply moved as he examined the details. But there was someone else in attendance, someone I hadn't expected to see. Between December and June, my father sent a total of 14 letters. I only opened 3 of them. The first was the 3-page apology from December 16th. The 7th letter arrived on March 12th, a shorter 2-page note focused entirely on early memories. He wrote about small moments from when Jaime was an infant, before the diagnosis, and before the fear took over. Moments Gerard hadn't allowed himself to remember for years. Holding Jaime for the first time, his earliest smiles, and how the baby used to reach out to him. I had a grandson, Gerard wrote, but I let him go because I was afraid. I abandoned him out of a fear of failing, and that exact choice is what truly made me a failure. I read that letter twice before placing it in the drawer alongside the first one. The 14th letter, dated May 30th, carried a noticeably different tone, one of quiet acceptance. Dear Melissa, this is my 14th letter. I don't know if you've read any of them, and I don't expect a reply. I just need you to know that I finally see it. I see Jaime. Not through the lens of my own fear or shame, and not as a disappointment for failing to fit a mold. I just see him for exactly who he is. I watched the footage of his new exhibition online. His work is brilliant and he is extraordinary. I wasted 7 years fearing what I didn't understand. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. I just want you to know that I finally see what you've seen all along. My grandson is a genius, my daughter is incredibly strong, and I failed you both. I am sorry, and I will carry that regret for the rest of my days. Your father, Gerard. I didn't reply to the 14th letter, but I didn't throw it away either. On June 15th at 7:10 p.m., the low-profile exhibition opened for the 80 guests. Jaime always felt more comfortable in smaller groups. While I was talking with Mrs. Foster, I noticed a figure standing quietly at the back of the room, keeping a respectful distance. It was Gerard. My father, now 67, looked noticeably older in a simple, unpretentious suit rather than his usual designer labels. He stood 35 feet away from Jaime, his eyes fixed on his grandson's artwork. He didn't try to approach or disrupt the event. He just watched silently for 20 minutes before heading toward the exit. He stopped briefly at the security desk to leave something behind, then disappeared into the night. 5 minutes later, the security guard walked over to me. "Ma'am, an older gentleman asked me to give this to you. He said his name was Gerard and that he didn't want to disturb you." Inside the envelope was a $10,000 check made out directly to the Children's Development Center, accompanied by a brief one-line note. "For Jaime's classmates. I cannot rewrite the past, but perhaps I can help secure their future." I stared at the check, the note, and his familiar handwriting. Uncle George looked over my shoulder. "He's trying," George murmured softly. "I know," I said quietly. Trying didn't erase 7 years of abandonment, but it represented a beginning, a small, completely unexpected shift. Following his December 17th email, Bradley had cut ties entirely. 0 calls, texts, or emails during 6 solid months of silence. George told me that Bradley had stopped speaking to our father as well, leaving the family completely fractured. Gerard had lost both of his children. In late April, Vanessa filed for divorce. George heard through mutual friends that Bradley had grown increasingly bitter, blaming our father for the public exposure of the family dynamic and directing all his anger toward the truth being revealed. By May, Bradley moved to Boston to start over in a new city, maintaining no contact with the family outside of handling the divorce proceedings. I didn't miss him. I realized I had never truly had a brother to begin with. Late in June, Jaime and I sat together in his room. The original blue and gold painting, the piece that changed everything, still hung safely on the wall. Jaime typed out a message on his device and showed me the screen. "Mom, can Grandpa come see my new painting?" I looked at him surprised. "Why do you want him to see it, sweetie?" His fingers moved slowly and deliberately across the keys. "Because I made another one for him. It's still blue and gold, but this time the gold is bigger." I looked at my 12-year-old son, a boy who had been dismissed, neglected, and left to count the days of his abandonment, yet who still possessed a profound capacity for hope. "The gold is bigger," he typed. "Gold is hope. Hope is bigger now." I thought about my father's 14 letters, the $10,000 donation, his quiet 20-minute presence at the exhibition, and the respectful distance he had kept without demanding anything from us. I also remembered the 7 years of absolute silence, the weight of the word cheap, every single missed milestone, and those 2,556 days. "I'll think about it," I told Jaime. He nodded gently and typed one final response. "Take your time. I waited 2,556 days. I can wait a little longer." My 12-year-old son was demonstrating a level of grace I wasn't even sure how to mirror. I don't know if I will ever call my father back. I don't know if full reconciliation is possible. All I know for certain is this: Jaime is thriving. His artistic talent is celebrated, and his voice is truly heard. His trust fund is completely secure, with $2,640,000 growing steadily to safeguard his future. The truth is entirely out there, documented by the cameras and witnessed by thousands. The false narratives are completely gone, and the record has been permanently corrected. Uncle George still visits us every single Sunday, completely constant and dependable. The one true family member who never left our side. Catherine checks in every month, offering new gallery opportunities and ensuring we remain protected. As for my father, he continues to write, attends the exhibitions from a distance, sends financial support, and attempts to make amends in his own clumsy way. I am not ready to offer forgiveness, and perhaps I never will be. But I am finally completely free. Free from needing his validation, free from waiting for him to change, and free from carrying the weight of his judgment. I no longer have to worry that his dismissive opinions of Jaime, of me, or of what truly matters will ever carry any weight. That painting was never cheap. My son was never cheap. His love was never cheap. And I no longer need my father to understand that truth. Jaime understands it. I understand it. The entire world understands it. And for now, that is more than enough.